Article just came out. What is that one big question?
You know, Frank, a lot of investors I've been talking to have been saying we think this expansion could be in its early innings. We think stocks could keep rising. What they are wondering is, will it be tech that leads the way in the second half of the year? You know, we're seeing NVIDIA contributed to around a third the S&P 500's total return in the first half of the year. And now a lot of people face this conundrum. Do we jump into these tech behemoths when they've run up so far? They're, up 50%, 60%. Or do we kind of sit on the sidelines and miss out some more? And I think that's a really challenging point for a lot of investors heading into the second half.
Everybody I talk to is basically saying the same thing. Like markets are pretty close to all-time highs. Been a huge run up. Is this frothiness? Is this where you're going to see a pullback or not? So a lot of questions there. Before we focus on the second half of the year, I want to talk about just what's going on today. Yeah. What's your WEX word of the day? What do you see shaping today's action?
My WEX word of the day is Trump trade. I think especially after the debate last night, I think that's really going to put the election front and center for so many investors. What we've seen is people have already been positioning for volatility, the October, November timeframe, positioning for some turbulence ahead of the election, as is often the case historically. I think especially after the election, people are going to be wondering, what is the Trump trade? Which sectors are going to be benefiting from a potential Trump presidency, another Biden presidency? We could see some volatility in the electric vehicles, for example, the cyclical corners of the market. Of course, Donald Trump's social media company. And it'll be really interesting to see where investors place their bets in today's trading day alone, because that can get priced in pretty quickly.
So we just had Tina Fordham on, great geopolitical strategist. She said it was kind of an inflection point in the election. So it sounds like you agree, like this election, or this debate, I should say, is going to have a big impact on the markets going forward in your mind?
So one thing I've already been hearing from investors, even this week, is one big thing to watch in the second half of the year is the election. And I think that was a wake-up call, right? It's coming. We're seeing that in a few months. And people have been pretty quick to place their bets on how could those tariffs ripple through the stock market, which sectors would benefit, which ones would be hurt. And I think we're going to try to see people try to figure that out really, really quickly. And it could be evident in the trading day today.
Interesting. Something else I want to talk to you about. Wolf Research out with a note basically saying, stick with tech, momentum trade and everything else. I want to circle back to what you said the one big question is for the second half, the momentum trade. Are there other ways to play it outside of the mega cap tech names, the Magnificent Seven? In your mind, where else do you see money going to? We heard some talk about money going to cyclicals, like you mentioned, in some other areas, but then we continue to see the same stocks powering the market.
It's crazy. I mean, the S&P 500 is outpacing its equal-weighted version by 11 percentage points this year. That's the most through June of any year since at least 1990. This is a record divergence and actually highlights how powerful that momentum trade has been, in part because people piling into these same stocks, right? Retail investors piling into these same stocks, making it really, really tough for individual investors and institutional investors to kind of play other parts of the market. And I think that's one big thing to watch in coming months.
It's hard to believe. We talked about actually two big questions for the second half. You know what we haven't talked about yet? The Fed. Believe it or not. Remember, first half of the year, all we ever talked about was the Fed. Now we have two big questions. The Fed's not even there. So I guess three big questions.
But I wonder how much the Fed matters for investors right now.
Really?
Because we have
Wait, you're saying this debate has taken the focus off the Fed?
I think the focus has kind of already come off the Fed. We entered the year hoping for 6 rate cuts. We're down to 2, maybe even 1. That hasn't affected the market. So I think that you could make an argument for investors are looking past the Fed at this point.
All right.